Hi, Kathy from ALECC. I'm here to talk to you today about, is it time to recertify? I get a lot of questions about recertification, hospice life discharges, documenting to support terminality. And so I thought today I would address recertification. Hopefully you'll find this video helpful and can present it to your staff in IDG as well and use it as a training tool. But when we talk about the hospice benefit, we know that the hospice benefit, we have an initial benefit period of 90 days. We have a second benefit period also of 90 days, and then we can have multiple benefit periods of 60 days from there. Once we get into that third benefit period, of course, that requires a face-to-face, but I'm going to talk today about recertifying patients. Most of our patients are on at least, we have a median, I should say, we have kind of a median length of stay, depending on what a primary terminal diagnosis a patient is admitted with. Some of our diagnoses that come with, for admissions can be quite long. As we know, our dementia or cardiac patients, neurological diagnoses can be a longer length of stay. But then we have some of our cancer diagnoses that are shorter length of stay. So when we're talking about length of stay, and we talk about kind of what's our median, in hospice agencies, a median length of stay is usually in the 30s, 30-some days. But otherwise, we're looking at, on the average, at least about 180 days with a length of stay, and that would mean then that you would be recertifying a patient because we've got the 90 days and the 90 days that make up that 180 days. So there's a recertification period in there. So what do we look at when we're recertifying a patient? And sometimes a nurse has the ability to know the patient. Sometimes we have people that go and do the recertifications, and they're required to look at the chart and what is the picture that's been painted about the patient, and then do the comparisons through the notes and the documentation for that recertification. So what exactly are we looking for? So if I was to walk in and I was to do a recertification and I knew nothing about a patient, where would I look? Where would I look so that I could do a very thorough and evidence-based recertification to gather my information through documentation so that I could do a really good comparative. Of course, I would look at the last certification. What did the nurse write in her assessment? And when we're looking at electronic documentation, we have all the check boxes that we go through. But the place that I always look, as do the people that audit your documentation, we go to the narrative, all the way through all the pages and pages and pages, but get me to that narrative, because in that narrative is the great summary of actually talks about the terminality, talks about what's going on with the patient. It should really talk about, what's going on with the comorbidities, the functionality of the patient, their activities of daily living, and a great summary of that patient. So a great place to start when you're going to do a recertification is look at that prior summary. What did that summary say? And when you're doing an assessment of the patient, doing a comparison in the summary, what are the changes that you have witnessed? Have you witnessed any changes in cognition, in weight, any mid-arm circumference changes? Have you noticed any changes in activities of daily living? Do we have patients now that we might be, that didn't need to be fed before, but now they're being fed? Perhaps they didn't need help with walking. Now they're needing help with not only walking, but transfers and everything else. Perhaps we had patients before that maybe weren't on oxygen and now they're using oxygen. or during this last benefit period, they needed antibiotics, they had infections, we needed to treat that, we introduced new pain medications, or we introduced some other types of medications for palliation and management of the patient. So you're really trying to look at all of that. Take a look at was there any PRN visits that were made that introduced new medications that you need to maybe address during that period of time. Were there any changes in their FAST score? Perhaps they were admitted for a cardiac reason, but one of their comorbidities is dementia related to Alzheimer's. And before they might have been a 6E, and now they're migrating to they're making the changes to a 7A. That's important to also document, because comorbidities certainly play a part in the overall decline and supporting of terminality. So you certainly want to include that in when you're doing a recertification. It's important also to talk about anything else that you're visibly seeing with the patient: sleeping, sitting, just any dyspnea, anything that is changing whatsoever with that patient. There are times when families want to tell us more that maybe we haven't witnessed. That's okay. But I always say, when it comes to, if you're really trying to look for, significant changes, I sometimes have families keep logs about eating, percent of eating. Maybe now we've moved from a mechanical soft to a puree diet. Are we seeing challenges with possible aspiration? You're really trying to fine tune and look into the tiny details. You may think it's a tiny detail, but it could be a significant change that will lead to another change that will be up and coming. So you really want to document all of these things that have been reported and that you are seeing and assessing. So it is really that narrative, the narrative from before to the narrative comparison that you are doing now. I always recommend for recertification that this takes place this assessment takes place about 3 to 3.5 weeks prior to the time period for recertification, because that allows your organization to sit as a team for IDG to come together and then determine, does this patient remain medically eligible to meet the hospice benefit? Or if we have not witnessed enough of a decline, are we looking at possibly doing a live discharge with this patient? And if we are, then when you've met with your IDG the 2 weeks prior, that gives your team enough time to do a safe live discharge with your patient. But that allows for enough time, or possibly your team comes together and your medical director says, I really want you to go back and take a look at this or assess that, and might give you some further guidance that you need. Just go and take one more look at 1 or 2 more things and come back and let's make a determination from there. I have sat with teams where we've done that as well. This is not something you do at the last minute. So you want to make sure that you've done a nice thorough assessment, that you're looking at your comparative narratives, that you've gone through all of the potential areas that you might be looking at. Again, we're looking at function, any infections, respiratory changes, any your body mass index changes, even behavioral changes. Have there been any, now we might have agitation, we might have, acting out a little bit more, cognitive, anything at all like that. We might see, maybe we've done some lab work, which I always recommend, depending on the primary diagnosis, that maybe we're going to grab some albumins or anything like that. Has there been some changes in the lab work that you can discuss and put as evidence base? Is there greater fatigue, coughing? Have we noticed any seizure activity? Things like that. So this is what you're going to be documenting to support that recertification. And again, it's really important to do that in the narrative. Now, I do know that everybody loves to do a copy, cut and paste, even from the narrative. I audit many a chart, and I do see where folks do that, because I I can test that one out and I see where the same grammatical errors are made each time. And I can appreciate that, you know, you guys are pressed for time, but really it behooves you to make sure that you put in as much communication and evidence-based documentation so that you can support all the reasons why that patient should remain on hospice. So we know hospice is a great service. We know we want to be there for all the right reasons and to support the patient. And you have a lot of power in doing a thorough assessment, thorough comparison as well in your documentation. And if the patient is not eligible at this time, that doesn't mean that you cannot remain in contact and bring the patient on when they are appropriate for hospice. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Again, I'm getting requests now for my Is It Time series, so please feel free to make a comment if you find something that would benefit your agency. I'd be happy to record it for you. Also, please like and subscribe. We certainly appreciate your support. And thank you again for all the good work that you do out there. Have a blessed day. Thank you now. Bye-bye.